All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into a conflict that didn't just devastate a country, it actually helped bring a global superpower to its knees. We're talking about the Soviet Afghan War.
So, how exactly does a war in Afghanistan lead to the downfall of a superpower? Let's dig right in. Because the answer, well, it's a huge turning point in modern history. It shows how a conflict that looked regional on the surface could have these massive global ripple effects.
Okay, to really get a handle on this war, we've got to rewind a bit. Let's go back to the late 1970s. You have to picture the world back then. It was basically dominated by this intense global rivalry. The whole planet was pretty much split right down the middle. So on one side, you've got the United States leading the Western Bloc. And on the other, the Soviet Union, this incredibly powerful communist country. These two giants were locked in what we called the Cold War, a massive struggle for global influence. And Afghanistan, well, it was about to become a very, very hot battleground in that Cold War. Right, so what was the deal? What actually pushed the Soviet Union to send its troops rolling across the border into Afghanistan? This wasn't some snap decision made overnight. It was really a mix of things: ideology, grand strategy, and frankly, a good amount of fear. So if you were in the Kremlin back then, what was the thinking? Well, for one, they had a friendly communist government in Afghanistan that was really struggling. Facing serious resistance, so they wanted to prop them up. But it was bigger than that. It was about keeping control in what they saw as their backyard and protecting their own strategic interests in a super volatile part of the world. The last thing they wanted was an unstable, maybe even hostile country right on their southern border. And man, things just spiraled out of control so fast. You see, here, a communist government grabs power in '78. But by the very next year, 1979, armed resistance is just blowing up all over the country. And it's that instability that leads Moscow to make this fateful call in December '79: send in the troops. They thought it'd be a quick, clean operation. Go in, restore order, get out. Wow, were they wrong. And that invasion? That was the start of a brutal, long, drawn-out war. What was supposed to be this short, sharp intervention to calm things down, it turned into the Soviet Union's version of Vietnam. A complete quagmire. Think about that. For almost a decade, you've got one of the most powerful armies on the planet, getting completely bogged down by the rugged terrain, and, more importantly, the just unbelievable determination of the local fighters. It became this relentless, unwinnable grind. This was the definition of an asymmetric fight. A classic David versus Goliath story, right? The Soviets roll in with tanks, attack helicopters, a huge, high-tech conventional army. And who are they up against? The Mujahideen. These were various groups of Afghan resistance fighters who knew the land like the back of their hand. They waged this incredibly effective guerrilla war, staging ambushes in these narrow mountain passes where all that fancy Soviet tech was basically useless. But here's the thing. The impact of this war went way, way beyond Afghanistan's borders. This wasn't just some isolated conflict. No, it became a huge global event. It set off this chain reaction, this domino effect, with consequences we're still feeling today. And you can really see how it all cascaded, just like a row of dominoes. First, the fighting creates a horrific humanitarian crisis. That, in turn, sparks this massive international outcry. And what does that do? It pulls in other world powers, especially the United States. The fallout was just immense, and everything was connected. You had millions of Afghan civilians forced to flee their homes. The U.S. saw a golden opportunity here, right? A chance to hurt their Cold War rival. So they started funneling tons of weapons and money to the Mujahideen, basically to bleed the Soviets dry in a proxy war. And maybe the biggest consequence of all, when the Soviets finally pulled out, they left this massive power vacuum. And that vacuum is what allowed extremist groups, most famously the Taliban, to rise up and take over. So here's the bottom line. This wasn't just some regional war that ended tragically for Afghanistan. The huge financial drain, the staggering loss of life for the Soviets, and the absolute political humiliation on the world stage, all of that directly contributed to the weakening and then the eventual collapse of the Soviet Union. It really helped slam the door on the Cold War.
Okay, so the last Soviet troops leave in 1989. The Cold War is winding down. What's the big takeaway here? What's the lesson from all of this?
And this is exactly why this whole thing still matters so much today. It's this powerful and pretty sobering lesson from modern history. It shows you the totally unpredictable and often disastrous consequences of foreign intervention. It doesn't matter how powerful you think you are. And, beyond all the big picture geopolitics, the war was just this incredible testament to the fierce determination of a local population fighting for their home. It really proved that resilience and knowing your home turf can sometimes overcome sheer military might. And that didn't just change the war, it helped change the course of world history, for real.
So that's the question we want to leave you with. Think about it. From the instability that still plagues the region to the very playbook for modern guerrilla warfare, the echoes of that decade-long war are still being heard today, shaping our world in ways that are just profound and absolutely undeniable.